Yes, and I forgot to turn this thing on. I'm thrilled to be back here. This building didn't exist when I was a student. What Talia didn't mention, one of my fantastic professors when I was a student here, is that I never graduated. John Bracken, wherever he is, convinced me to drop out. So I think he left the room because he knew that I was going to say that in my talk. So, I moved to Austin almost exactly 5 years ago to the day. And I left mostly because I got this opportunity I couldn't turn down, which was to take what I had been studying in grad school about how citizens use technology to engage in the public sphere and the impact that technology can have on our public decision-making process. And then the Obama campaign called and asked me if I wanted to come actually do that work in the most distilled form you can possibly imagine. And I couldn't say no. And that led me to Code for America, because I feel like elections are really just the tip of the iceberg. And so lots for me has changed in the last 5 years. Unfortunately, one thing that hasn't changed in the last 5 years are these numbers, which I think all of you, most of you, have them like imprinted on the front of your brain. Maybe have nightmares about this graph over here on the left. And so, for someone who has devoted their career has dropped out of grad school to devote my life to solving this problem, it's really frustrating. However, I'm pretty hopeful, not about these numbers in particular, but that there is an answer. And the answer is that I think we're focusing on the wrong part of the problem. This is my unified theory of public engagement. And this is one of the reasons why I couldn't hack grad school for 2 years. I remember saying a week before I dropped out, I'm sorry I'm harping on this, but I said something like, man, it's super lame to drop out of grad school. Like, who can't hack 2 years in grad school? It's not like, you're Bill Gates dropping out of undergrad. Anyway, I did it. And so this is as far as I got with things like unified theories. The problem is, I think, that we're spending a lot of time down here on this bottom part of the loop building tools that allow citizens to speak. We're spending very little time on tools to help them be heard by the institutions that they're trying to change. So we're ignoring, I think, a very important user of civic engagement technologies, that's government. And to Matt's point about the scale, I can tell you one sector of our lives that reaches more people than entertainment and sports and food, and that's government. So if we can influence the way that government delivers services, the way that government engages with the public, we are affecting change at a massive scale. Before, I just don't want it to be misinterpreted. It's not that I don't think this bottom part is important. We do need to be building tools that allow people to speak, but we already have so many of them. And none of this process works unless the whole thing works. If we create all this demand for citizen participation into government and they run up against a really crappy experience and a brick wall when they do, then what have we done except for just validate their cynicism? So I think we need to be asking questions about, one of the questions that I thought of this morning was, why does the state of California's election campaign finance database look like the second season of Hoarders? I don't know. Is it enough to just say, screw it, we're going to build our own thing over here on the side? Or could we be asking questions like, how did the data get that way in the first place? What are the tools that the government is using to work with that data? When citizens provide feedback, how is government receiving it? How do they make sense of it? When they're hearing from hundreds of thousands of people, how do they pull the intelligence out of that? How do they know that it's coming from a representative number of voices? Most importantly, I think, is how do they let citizens know that they've been heard? And if we start asking these kinds of questions, I think we can make a lot of progress on solving what's broken about this system. In many cases, government really wants to solve this problem too. I know we tend to think that government is the enemy, that they're against us, that their data looks like crap because they don't want to share that information. But we get more. I work at Code for America, as mentioned before, and we work with local governments to help them design better services with technology. And we've worked on all kinds of issues. The one issue that we get the most requests for help on is public engagement. They want to help fix this problem. So that's become a central focus for us at Code for America. And I'm not going to make you read all the words on the slide. I know it looks really terrible. But I wanted to make the point, you can see the whole thing. This is our brand new civic engagement standard to start our articulation of what government needs to be capable of in order to do public engagement well in the 21st century. You can find it down there, c4a.me/engagement standard. But I wanted to put the whole thing up here because for you, for the people in this room, this is super obvious. You're probably like, duh, meet people where they are. Duh, you have to know who it is you're trying to reach. But this is so non-obvious in government. And one of the first ways that we at Code for, we're actually building tools that embed these practices and then hoping to spread those tools across the country. And the main kind of problem area that we're focusing on right now in the civic engagement space is public meetings. So this is from Miami-Dade County, the home of the Knight Foundation. This is how Miami-Dade County publishes information about when public meetings are. This is how the city of Oakland does it, where I live. So at least Miami-Dade a little bit is one step ahead of Oakland on that front. So we could do, there's something technology can do to help make this information more accessible. Is my video going to play when I click the next button? Okay.
It's going to pause for you.
Oh, it will. Okay. So if you can find the public meeting and you show up, what happens? How many of you have been to a public meeting and had a really great time? I saw some hands like go half up and then shoot right down. Yeah, so you probably felt a lot like this woman in Oakland.
And I'm taking more time because 50 some odd people didn't get to stay up tonight, even though I'm exhausted and my body hurts and my 13-year-old dog is freaking out because it's so late.
So she is literally pulling her hair out. But the secret is that government hates it too. I mean, can you imagine being a city councilor sitting up behind that dais during these meetings?
What is very clear to all of us is that the opinions that we hear in a city council meeting may or may not reflect the majority opinion of the people we represent. So
we have city officials begging us to get new voices to show up at public meetings, and they just can't figure out how to do it. So what are some ways? I'm just going to throw out a few ideas of how we might use technology to make this process easier and to bring in more people, maybe some of those interested bystanders who certainly aren't going to subject themselves to this kind of meeting. This is a tool we built, Code for America Fellows built in Mesa, Arizona, last year. It's just launched as a pilot. I want to say that I'm going to show 3 examples. All 3 of them, very importantly, we built them, but are being maintained and supported by local government. So it is their responsibility to make sure that these tools work and that they're responding to citizens through them. This is a super simple tool. You enter your address, and doesn't this look a lot prettier than that PDF grid calendar that Miami-Dade County was publishing? You can see all of the meetings that are relevant, that are happening, that are relevant to the place where you live. And you can easily see when and where they're being held, and importantly, attachments that has all of the documents that are related to that meeting. This is called Municipal. This is Textizen. Textizen, actually supported by the Knight Foundation, was a fellowship project in Philadelphia a few years ago, is now a civic startup and is in use in dozens of cities around the world. This was solving a problem of how you can get relevant information from people who aren't going to show up at a meeting at a time and place and through a tool that is accessible to them. So instead of doing planning meetings in the basement of a municipal building, they put up posters in buses or at bus stops about and asking very direct questions. People get really into these. They want to answer more questions. And now, importantly, you can opt in to having the city have your phone number. They can text you when other relevant things happen to follow up with you and to perpetuate those feedback loops. This is Textizen. This is a similar tool called City Voice, which we built in partnership with South Bend, Indiana. It's just voice-based. South Bend used it for blighted properties. You put a sign like this in front of a property that you want the city or citizens to provide feedback on, and then all of that feedback is aggregated on a website, so you can hear what all of your neighbors had to say about that property too. And importantly, the city can pull out that data. And it ends up being really rich in a way that text message or other kind of quant data can't be. in one example in South Bend, a guy called in and said, hey, this is my grandmother's house. I didn't even know it was on the chopping block. I'd really like to buy it and refurbish it. He wouldn't have known that his grandmother's house was up for demolishment unless he had seen that sign in front of the house. And probably wouldn't have had an easier way to let someone know than by just picking up the phone and leaving the message. One thing I'm really excited about, we haven't actually built this yet, but if someone wants to do it with me, I'd be excited about it. Who's done a spectrogram before? Oh my God, you guys, they're so much fun. We should do one today at some point. Basically, you throw out sort of a controversial statement that someone either you can agree or disagree with. If you strongly agree, you're on one end of the spectrum. You strongly disagree, you're on the other. We did this in an analog format at a meeting in Vallejo, California around public safety. And people loved it. They were just like gathered around, pulling their neighbors over to discuss the answers to the questions. And I was talking to the mayor who was there at the time, and he was just really excited about how energetic people were around this tool. And I suggested that they maybe do spectrograms at city council meetings. So we're going to try to follow up with him on that. We could also build a digital version of this pretty easily and see how that might change the conversation around public decisions. So that's what I've got, just a quick set of ideas. I want to implore the News Challenge winners to start thinking about government as a user of your technology, or the role that government has to play in the success of your projects. And if you want to join us, you can do this work with us as well through our volunteer program, the Brigade. There's one right here in Austin. Where's our Open Austin people? Mateo's waving his hand. Meets every...
Twice a month, kind of on, I guess the best day to say is third Mondays.
Third Mondays, but all the meetings are on the website. If you don't live in Austin, you can join your local brigade here at our website. Thanks a lot.